The AWARE project's aim is to balance the public conversation about psychedelics, spread accurate information, and give a new face to psychedelia. We feel that this change will occur through connection and relationship, one individual at a time. We are calling on everyone whose lives have been improved through the mindful use of psychedelics to educate themselves and become ambassadors for the psychedelic experience. Show those around you that people who use psychedelics mindfully cross all social, racial, economic, and political boundaries.
Without further ado, I figured we would start by going through the artists. You could introduce yourselves and maybe tell us a little bit about the art that you do and how psychedelics have influenced that art.
Hello. My name is Ben Kramer. On the internet, or my art handle is Ben Ebene or Ebene Art. I primarily work in paint, acrylic paint, and colored pencil, but I also do ink and digital and design work too. And yeah, my style, I would say, is primarily psychedelic in nature. Psychedelics have done a lot for me personally and have done a lot for my art. I went through a period of time where I was it's like I've been making art since I was a little kid, and I kind of lost the spark, but psychedelics and discovering psychedelic art brought it back, and I was like, wow, now I know what I'm doing, and I have a purpose for this. And yeah, it just is an aesthetic that speaks to me. Yeah.
Do you do your art on the influence of psychedelics?
Not usually. Sometimes. I do a lot of sketching. Yeah. It's definitely a good thing to pull just left field ideas out of the subconscious. And it's I don't know, especially the tryptamine family creates the most beautiful, amazing images, and that's a big part of what I'm trying to capture, not necessarily recreate, but capture the essence of what I really enjoy about it, and the fluidity or intense detail of it. I have created under the influence of substances, but generally I feel that I'm at my technically at my technical best when I'm sober in most circumstances, but I definitely have had pieces where I had no idea what I was supposed to do with them, and then I ate some acid, and then I was like, oh, yeah.
Of course. Allie?
Hi everybody, my name is Allie. I do a lot of different things, but the art that I brought to share tonight is primarily my ceramic sculptural work. I also like to paint, and I also like to spin fire, so it's kind of my main art forms. I work as a scientist, and I do research on different medicinal plant compounds, so I'm very interested in plants and the amazing things that they do, and yeah, I draw a lot of inspiration from nature, and I guess a lot of my life has been influenced by my experiences with psychedelics. I feel like it's given me a lot of insight and made me feel a deeper connection to the world around me and nature. Sorry. And yeah, I wouldn't say that my style is specifically psychedelic, but I think that psychedelics have led me to the mindset of how I portray my ideas. So a lot of my artwork is very symbolic, or will touch on mythology or the idea of nature sentience. And so I think that my experiences with different compounds, notably I would say psilocybin mushrooms, have kind of put me in tune with the idea of like a sentient nature. So that's it.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Briar. I grow my own crystals incorporated into my art. That's collage. I have paintings in 3D. No brushes have touched any of my paintings because that's boring. I'd like to say Psychedelic taught me that, but it didn't. I take my inspiration from things I've seen, whether I was sober or not, in places that I can see, whether I'm sober or not, in places I go when I'm meditating, whether I'm sober or not.
That's all. Oh, no. Okay. Hi, my name is Amaya. I go by the name Amaya Merkaba, because most people can't remember my first name, which is my real name. So, I started painting maybe 7 years ago, and I had my first experience with LSD at the age of 23, which was 10 years ago. I was 300 pounds and very unhappy with my life, and I would say that psychedelics gave me a complete physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental turnaround. I probably took too much. I don't party anymore. But what I miss about them, I like to paint. And I feel like my art has been extremely influenced by things that I've seen, things that others have seen and told me about. My study with tarot and numerology also is incorporated a lot into my art, and I feel that dimensionally, art is typically expected to be flat. And people like Briar and like Ethos here, who have discovered different dimensions in their art, I don't think that only psychedelics can bring that forward, but I do believe that the gateway in my brain definitely was opened. My action of ingesting was intentional, but what happened afterwards, I had no idea what would happen, and I'm glad that it found me. I can only hope that others can. I've had a lot of sober people come up to my art at festivals and tell me they've only had, a beer, and they're like, "Oh my God, your art is drugs," and that's like the greatest compliment I could ever get, because most of the time I paint sober. There's a couple painting pieces here that I was at festivals, and most of the art I've done is live. So as my greatest influence, I can't really say is a person. I would say my greatest influence is music. I believe that sound and color therapy is really important, and I don't know if you guys know about chakras and those things, but I try to incorporate therapeutic images so that people can look at the art and just feel better. That's really my intention with my art. I call them dreamscapes, so a lot of people can relate to the eyeballs and the shapes and the things that we see. I try to paint molecules and planets, or whatever you want to see. Try to leave it open to interpretation, because I believe that psychedelics bring forward our natural intuition and also bring forward our intentions and help us step closer to who we really want to be. I don't think it's the only path. I think that it's the quickest path, and it's not always the most righteous path. So that I can leave you with that, because I'm done talking now.
Thank you.
Hello. Hi, my name is Arash. I guess I've been doodling and drawing since I was very little, as far back as I can remember, but over time I got into various different things. I started to write screenplays and got into filmmaking, and eventually got into music videos. Currently, you could call me a photographer, because that's been paying the rent for the past 3 or 4 years. So that kind of took over, and I also host Burner Podcast, and that's on episode number 80. So I think a lot of, and that's about like the 4th year that I've been doing this particular show, but prior to that had been doing another one for coming up on 7 years. And I think as an artist, ultimately what I've found that what I do is really, it's a portrait. usually of an individual person, but it can be of subcultures and communities. And it happens to be that one piece of equipment I use is a camera, and another piece of equipment I use is a recorder. But essentially, I've learned over time that they are the same thing. And part of the journey towards that experience goes back to what I would probably reference as one of the top 5 most profound and important events in my personal development and my spiritual journey, which was my first DMT trip, which was 2013, maybe, I'm gonna guess, or 12, 13, something like that. And having like a complete ego death experience and returning to the human body, and I remember like there was like a laundry list of things that changed about my life, and I was keeping track of it. It was like up to 50 or 60 things. But one of the many things was that I noticed that my photography like immediately propelled forward in quality and interest and just everything about it, just the ease of creating the imagery. And I think a lot of it is because it's been the same thing as the connection that I do when I interview people versus when I take photos versus I draw a photo or write a story. It's the exact same thing, simply with different tools and different interactions with reality. But ultimately, it's I think what we're doing as artists is we are trying and beautifully failing at capturing a moment that has passed. Because as sad as it is, we're all deteriorating. Everything here is withering away as we speak. You just can't see it. So you take a photo of something, it's already decaying and it's gone. Even just looking at the photo afterwards, it's changing. So, and I think that what psychedelics have done is it made that connection with my mind and that exploration more available in front of me. So it's made the art better as a result.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. I first want to say thank you to Leah and to the Aware Project for holding this. Thank you. For inviting me here. Thank you all for coming over to talk to all of us. Because art is a huge way where I realize just how I connect to other people, and sometimes it's been very difficult for me throughout my entire life. But I'm Ethos, or my given name is Natalie, and I guess I was actually born and raised in the Mormon church, and so I was fed all these like propaganda towards drugs and these, I don't even like calling them drugs, I call them medicines, and cannabis, all of it. Like I stayed away from it. I was also in the military for about 6 years. I played college soccer. I was like really all about the American dream and getting a 9-to-5 and a 401k plan, all those great things, and life that never ever happened for me ever. As much as I tried to pursue it, it never happened. And I grew up with a great deal of mental health. The military gave me insomnia, and I had severe anxiety where my mind would never stop running and thinking and going and going and going. And it wasn't until after the election in 2016, at the time I was living in Washington, D.C., when that happened, where I had a complete mental breakdown where I almost checked myself into a mental health institute. And it was from that moment on that I dedicated my life to my self-healing and to my self-care. And that seemed to be something that was commonly happening amongst my echo chamber on Facebook. Everyone's like self-care, self-healing. But I really dedicated my life to it, and I ended up in the cannabis legalization movement in Washington, D.C. And on 4/20, actually a year ago, this Friday, I did a demonstration, and I was unlawfully targeted by the DOJ and arrested for gifting cannabis in the District of Columbia. And then my rights were I was held in lockup for over 25 hours, put in solitary for another 6. And I saw so much happen just in that day. And then it made me so mad that I went out on our demonstration that we were having, where we knew we were going to get arrested, and did it again. I was just so mad that my rights were violated as a DC resident. But that experience was so traumatic that actually the climate change march was that following weekend, and all my friends were tripping on LSD, and I was like, oh man, that looks like so much fun. Like, we just got arrested and these guys are just like out jumping in water fountains and just like having a grand old time. And I was like, I want to do that too. And I got dosed and I was like, what do I do? What do I do? I'm like freaking out. My anxiety is like going crazy, and the advice that I got, I will never ever forget, is like, do what your heart tells you. If it tells you to cry, cry. If it tells you to dance, dance. If it tells you to go to nature, go to nature. And from that moment on, it was the most life-changing experience. Something that I recently said, I set up my first art studio this week, is that the art life chose me, and I just chose to listen to it. And it was through psychedelics that and plant ceremonies that my entire life opened up. After I used LSD, I had the opportunity to do my first ever art exhibit at Burning Man. And then I was asked to art direct a festival in Washington, D.C. called Catharsis on the Mall. And then I was in Tulum and was able to live paint out there for Crypto Psychedelic. I was also at Lucidity and live painted there. And then this following weekend, I'll be at Desert Hearts being able to live paint. So it's just like, it's been a year, you know. And like, what's going on? Yeah. So I'm just listening, you know. I'm just following nature and trusting and surrendering to the universe, and knowing that that this universe has me and supports me and loves me, and I try to put that through my art. What Alex Gray calls energetic nodes. I just put as much light, and I'm going to finish this with saying that I believe that art heals. Yes. And that's my mission and purpose, not just to create my art, but to activate the creator in each and every one of you. So if there's anything I can do to support you and your creation, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here for not just me, but for everyone else. So thank you.
Thank you guys so much for sharing. I appreciate you all opening up.
It's caring.
Sharing is caring.
So I did think of some other things to say.
The floor is yours.
So, my whole life I was trying to figure my ass out. So have I. And then I took LSD with my friends, and he was like, wow, I think you're always like this. And I was like, yeah. Now we're sharing the things that I see all the time. You see them too. It was amazing. It helped me know that I wasn't alone and I wasn't crazy. So, well, crazy enough. Fox. Okay. I think that's it.
Perfect. That was a good addition. So now I think we'd like to hear from a couple of you guys how you think psychedelics are affecting the current contemporary art movement. So psychedelic art has been around since the 1960s. And kind of made its presence known in different forms. And I'd like to hear from you guys if you think there's a resurgence, or how you think psychedelics are affecting the current landscape of contemporary art.
Well, with Alex Gray's whole DMT experience in his art is very influential, and has been...
You want to maybe tell the audience who Alex Gray is?
Alex Gray is
he does, I don't know if you guys have heard of the band Tool. It's kind of a popular band amongst our generation. I'm 33. Tool utilized Alex Gray's art. He used to do a lot of like medical art, so a lot of his stuff has like, you know, the muscle texture and everything. If you go home and Google Alex Gray, you'll figure it out. There's lots of eyeballs involved. Gray with an E, yeah, G-R-E-Y. Alex and Allison Gray. I would say I'm definitely influenced mostly by music, but by his art. I know I got the eyeballs going on. If you've ever experienced hallucinogenic experiences, you might have seen the eyeballs too. I think that it's a universal hallucination, which is phenomenal to me. But yeah, like if you recognize the band Tool, you'll recognize a lot of the cover art is Alex Gray. But as far as, I don't know anything about contemporary art, I just know that I paint stuff. Like, I don't even know what contemporary means, so I'm just gonna pass this. But yeah, that's Alex Gray is.
I would say that the contemporary art movement is moving away from this elitism of being in galleries and having to pay like thousands of dollars to have it. I think that it's moving from only the rich and the educated to everybody. I mean, I was recently at Lucidity and had the honor of being welcomed into the art temple. And I don't know if any of you guys have worked with the art temple, but they were at Oregon Eclipse and they set up this tent, and it's just like they provide art supplies for anyone to create. And that's my goal in life. I think that everyone is looking for an outlet to express themselves. And I think art isn't just painting, it's also spoken word, it's music, it's writing, it's dialoguing, and I think that everyone is inspired. Exactly, art is life, and instead of thinking that only particular individuals can create it, I think everyone can. And I think that's why I love sacred geometry, is because everyone can create that, and everyone can do something amazing with that. And I think that's where this movement is moving, and I think that everyone, that is just creating access, and psychedelics just help enable that, and in fact, like, push past your ego of like, I think the biggest struggle with art is not being able to get started. Like, I have this idea, I have this idea, this idea, this idea, but when are you actually gonna start that idea? And I think psychedelics just completely removes that ego and lets you just like dive into it.
Time and reality, they remove time. Like, oh, the time is now. Yeah, the time is now.
The time is now.
The time is right now. I don't want this.
Ben, Alex, you guys understand?
I've just in general noticed like how psychedelics have kind of grown out of their like stigmas and like just being in like a niche culture and just like kind of permeating into like society more as a whole. And like you'll find it's like obviously yes, like festival culture has it, and like visionary art has it, and like psychedelic art has it, but it's like hitting way more than that. It's like in hip hop culture now. It's like in metal culture now. It's in like so much and like everywhere. And people, even if they like don't think of their work or their creative work that they make as being like psychedelic in nature. Like I know a lot of people that create like music or art or like fine art or like poetry or like all kinds of different stuff that are just like profoundly influenced by psychedelics, even if they don't necessarily identify themselves as like being psychedelic or like their creations as being like psychedelic in nature. I think like that's pretty huge.
Arash has something to add.
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on. There's a lot of psychedelic art happening out there that like they're not directly psychedelic. Like you're not looking at it and seeing like the Alex Gray style stuff. Like it's happening everywhere. I know that for a fact because I've been with a lot of artists who have done psychedelics and watched how the music they were writing has expanded and like the kind of work that they're creating move forward. Right after I had my first DMT trip, I was telling a friend of mine about it, who is a very progressive Muslim, and she was describing, like when I was describing the whole experience of having complete ego death and returning to my body and everything, and she was like, Arash, what you're describing sounds like Muhammad's ascension. And for those of you who don't know, the short version of the story was that Muhammad was meditating in a pitch black cave every night for hours on end, and at one point he was illiterate, and then he came back and he started speaking this like beautiful poetry, and that's a lot of where it all kind of started. But a few weeks later, I happened to be just kind of like Googling around, and I ended up across this like essay by a Muslim mystic who was describing that I subscribe to this thought, that Muhammad had probably induced what was like a natural DMT trip, because he's meditating for multiple hours a night in a pitch black cave 1,300 years ago, where we had no processed food, no fluoride in the water, like you name it. It was a different experience of reality. And then he came back and he started speaking this like beautiful poetry, and I'm sure everybody here can attest to having those experiences. When you come back, all of a sudden the words are connecting, the colors are connecting, you're seeing through the fabrics of life. Colors are more beautiful forever. And I think that we're experiencing, like we're seeing a lot of artists having these experiences, and we're watching it happen without necessarily seeing this direct psychedelic themes in the subject necessarily, but just better art as a whole.
Wonderful.
I know, right?
Because you're in the middle. Oh, sit tight.
Okay.
For our last structured question, I was hoping you guys could share your experiences or your thoughts on how psychedelics have affected the perception of your art, or the interaction of other people with your art, or how it's engaged the viewer, so
I
to
can
speak.
talk about this. I can do it. You go first.
They like it a lot more when they do it.
That's true. As I said previously, I do a lot of live art, so I'm
Can you put your mic up a little?
Oh, yeah, I do a lot of live art, so the process of that is setting up at a venue where there's music happening and people are partying, and, you know, I don't know what they're doing or what they're on or whatever, but the most beautiful thing in the world is when people see what you've created and they see it in their own light, and they see their own patterns that you've created, and I can definitely say that the psychedelics make people appreciate it more in the moment. It doesn't mean they buy it, but they appreciate it in the moment, you know? And that's a very beautiful experience when you can move someone to emotions. I think that it allows people to see it with new eyes, maybe many eyes, many new eyes. And I think that it allows people also to experience something that they didn't know existed, or it inspires people. And I think that if art doesn't inspire, then I don't know, you know, all art is art.
Then it's broken.
What's that?
Then it's broken.
Right, like it needs to inspire, and if, you know, and like art is art is art. It could be a stick figure and still be art. But I feel that the inspiration is almost a spiritual thing. It's almost a spiritual experience. Yeah, right?
Yeah, like they used to believe a long time ago, artists never took full credit for their own creations, that they always gave credit to their muses,
right,
or to some external force, some zephyr blowing through them that they could sail on and use that creativity. And I totally subscribe to that, because I am not up to the art myself.
Yeah, like it's not.
And psychedelics let you know that that is true, because it lets you see more than you can see with just your eyes.
It's a spiritual experience.
I think that, kind of going off of the last question of how, you know, I think psychedelics are becoming more mainstream, and so more people are, you know, it's not just a niche thing for this really specific subgroup. There's people across all different walks of life having these experiences, and personally with my art, I don't really bring it out that much. A lot of it I just share online, because moving sculptures around is really hard. But I think that, I mean, you know, this is just my thought, is that because the collective experience is having more of these like deep introspective, maybe, you know, having their brain access these more primordial type of symbols or themes, and that's a lot of what I'm inspired by, and so that's what I create. So I think that maybe more people are able to connect with my art and relate to it on a deeper level, because they've had these same types of insights or connections. And I don't think that, you know, you have to experience psychedelics to understand that, but like we mentioned, I think that it's a conduit to understanding, and you know, you just can pick up on those things more easily. So I really like to hear, you know, when I share my art, I like to just hear what people think of it and what their experience is, because for me it's something like totally personal, and just, you know, it comes from this complicated, emotional, inspirational place that's like probably totally different from what you think when you look at it. So, you know, if someone asks like, oh, what is this about? And I'm like, what do you think it's about?
Yeah, right.
You know, like what is your perception of it? Because that's what's really interesting to me, is how art can connect us based on these motifs that are present in our lives. So I think it's something in society that's only bringing us closer together, and I think that's really cool.
Very insightful.
Something that I get a lot as being an artist that makes like psychedelic art that's more like subjective in nature and like with the goal of being like psychedelic, is I get a lot of people like responding to me that like, this thing that you made, like I've seen it before, or like I've been there before, or like I've had this like same experience, and while like admittedly it's not necessarily my goal to completely just recreate something that I've seen, it's like a thing that ends up in there, and I think that's really interesting that I get a lot of people saying, like, this is a thing that I have experienced, and I love it. I think it's really cool, and I think it also validates, at least to me, like validates the experience when so many people are having like these same things happen to them, and it's like, why? Like, why is it that so many people are having these same experiences? It's not like an individual thing where it's just like a hallucination that you had or whatever. It's like very concrete, like clear similarities that like multiple people are having under like the same influence of the same substances. And yeah, to me, it just validates the whole experience, that it's not just like some ephemeral thing that's like a fleeting like vision or hallucination. It's something that's like concrete and like real in like in that like experiential sense.
You guys have anything to add before we open it up to audience questions? Start thinking of your questions, guys.
It's funny, I think a lot of times, depending on the psychedelic, the best way that I can describe it is like, it feels like if this thing we're all walking around in is the Windows interface, what the psychedelic, depending on the dosage, can do is like blast it away and you're looking at the DOS prompt. Or you're blowing yourself off into like a whole other field of vision. And yeah, and then you come back to it. But I firmly believe that there isn't any psychedelic experience that's not already somewhere in our own systems. I think all the substance does is switch something on. And like, so like for me, it's like, and I think a lot of different people come to different things in their own way. There is no like, it has to be this way or this particular setting. For me, one of the important experiences that I had was taking ecstasy at a totally mainstream music festival and having this like complete euphoria experience and feeling connected. Everybody's my best friend, everybody's so beautiful. And then like after I kind of came out of it, I'm like, what is it about euphoria that makes us feel very connected to each other? Because that feeling is completely universal, like you're describing. Euphoria makes you feel connected to every other human being, every other living thing. And that's a universal feeling. So what is that? Like, let's try to chase that. Let's try to make that happen more naturally. And I mean, I think most of us are on the same page. Like, we're all a lot closer to that than we've ever been.
Integration.
Cool. I feel like everyone's like really nailed what I was thinking, but I also think like what artists do, or when you create, you're just trying to interpret your reality or the way that you're perceiving things. And something for me, especially with the Church of Chaos, is pretty much an accumulation of all the psychedelic and plant ceremonies that visuals that I've had. When I was first using LSD, I had no idea what I was seeing, but I was seeing like these rainbow shapes and nodes, and at one point when I mixed mushrooms and LSD together, I was seeing like literally waves of grids everywhere, and I'm like, what is going on? And it wasn't until I actually sat with ayahuasca that I realized, like, oh my god, this is what people call sacred geometry. And I think these shapes and these symbols we all relate to because there's a balance in our brains in the way the human consciousness is that interprets things in a geometric logic. And And like, I mean, when I moved back here to California, I would literally, like, I can't help but stare at plants and flowers. Like, if you ever go on a walk with me, I'm like, ooh, look at that flower, ooh, look at that. But the succulents out here are literally like flowers, Fibonacci spirals. It's literally the flower of life. It's literally all these really awesome geometric patterns that actually have names to it. And that's why I really dove in deep with sacred geometry. And I think that more people are just want to have a name to what they're seeing, or have an image or a sound to what they're interpreting in their reality. And I think that's what artists do, and I think that's what all of us are doing. Like, it's been so amazing to see what people are doing and to continue to interact with artists. So yeah.
I also, I was speaking to somebody in the crowd about it. I can't see anything past this light, so that's kind of nice. We are all genetically coded to dream. This series I did is called Dream NA. But we all have dreams, all of us. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, Christian, Muslim. It doesn't matter what is going on as a human being, or even as a dog, or a cat, or a caterpillar. We all have dreams. And I think that, as we all know, hopefully that, we all know that dimethyltryptophan, right, is released while you're dreaming or dying.
DMT.
Yeah, DMT is released while you're dreaming. They're starting to think that it's released even during your waking life. And I really feel that we are all genetically encoded to see these patterns and predicaments in front of us, and we all recognize coincidence. There's things in our lives that we can't explain, and I think in our waking and sleeping life, it doesn't matter if you use psychedelics or not, you're going to have dreams. Like, even if you don't dream every night, you're going to have dreams sometimes. Your brain is genetically encoded to decipher symbolism, and I think that that's a very beautiful thing, and I think that that's one thing that all of us, archetypes. If we see a pregnant woman, it doesn't matter what language you speak, it means mother. We all have things that are that we can relate to as far as symbols and archetypes go as human beings. And I think that art really unifies that amongst any population. Like, I feel like art kind of brings us together on that level.
As do psychedelics.
As do psychedelics.
And with that, I'd like to open this discussion up to some audience questions. We have a mic that can be brought to you. If you guys want to raise your hands, any questions? Any questions out there? Okay, we have one in the back.
Got it? Okay. I can walk the mic around if that's easy.
We already have a runner. No,
Okay, no, cool. No, you're good.
No, bring it back, please.
Bring it back.
We already have an awesome volunteer running a mic, so thank you. That's yours. You're helpful. I like helpful. Okay.
My question, I'm just curious if there's any particular psychedelic that has been most influential in your art.
Whose art?
Anybody? Anybody feel
the whole, everybody up there.
Any
particular one? I like them all together. Like, when they're all together, that's really influential.
Sounds crazy.
Under the influence.
I wouldn't necessarily say there's like one, but it's like each different one has said like different things to me. Like recently, I like had a breakthrough DMT experience for the first time in like 5 years. Or like it was the first time I had smoked DMT in like 5 years. And like after I like came back, but it was still influencing me, I had like a piece of art of mine up on the wall, and I could like see so much more detail that like I could push into it. And I was like your framework is good, but like you're not hitting that mark yet. And just showed me like there's so much like further in that you can like push your work.
So it showed you your potential?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's amazing.
And like I've had similar things too on with psilocybin. I was telling somebody here earlier that I had an interesting like experience on like a really high psilocybin dose where I was like seeing these like amazing things, and I was thinking to myself like, wow, that would be really cool if I made that, and it like yelled at me and was like, no, like this is for you right now. Like, this isn't for you to like take out and like create or like do something else with. Like, this is like our like our gift for you, and that like really stuck with me. And that's why like I was kind of saying before, like my goal for my art anyways isn't necessarily to like directly replicate like things that I've seen or like my experiences, but to sort of take like the essence of it or like the feeling of it or like certain aesthetics of it that I enjoy, but never to like completely recreate like an experience that I've had, because it's like a gift from the substance to me.
Legitimately at hand.
Yeah.
If you had to pick one.
Most of my psychedelic use has been LSD. I've experimented with other psychedelics, and it just doesn't really work, I guess, with my chemistry. But LSD, like, I'm able to do so much on it, and it actually has made me extremely focused and productive. So LSD is definitely my choice. Mushrooms and other things make me like actually go into dream state, so I can't really paint on it.
Yeah, I couldn't say that a specific one has done it. Each one of these trips has contributed to the general personal journey, and it's just my shit's gotten better as a result. It's become more honest. When I look at my earlier photos, they were more, there's a lot more learning craft and effects. Now it's just more.
I don't know what to say.
You don't have to answer.
I answered. I feel like a lot of these pieces were influenced by LSD, but the DMT family definitely helps things make sense, you know. So I could say that it all makes sense and not make sense, really. You know.
Speaking of making sense and not making sense, ketamine has been the hallucinogen that has actually associated me back into reality and helped me focus and see things clearly. So that's pretty interesting.
Do you create art often on ketamine?
You can't do much.
Yeah. When I was a child, I had a vision of there's this drug that you could do in the future that would like make you better at whatever it was you were doing at the time you were doing it, and it turns out that exists.
Okay.
At least you think you're doing better.
I can't say that there's any one particular compound that's affected me and like really, you know, made my art what it is, because I feel like every experience has only shaped me as a person. It's almost like, what experience most made you who you are? It's like, I don't know, they all kind of work together to produce this outlook that I have on life and, you know, general reality, which sometimes does and sometimes does not make sense, and sometimes it only makes it more confusing. But something that I've have been trying to embrace is that, you know, it doesn't ultimately, you know, I feel like when I started, it's like, I need to make this specific thing and it has to be this way. But over time, I feel like just giving up my like really specific idea of how things have to be and kind of letting my process take control and just like freely just creating, like being like, what do you want to be? Let's just work and see how it goes. And I think that mindset has been largely influenced by psychedelics and just, you know, realizing that trying to hold on so tightly to things and really trying to control everything, it doesn't always give you the best outcome. So it's more of been like a teaching process to myself rather than like making me create any kind of specific art, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Also, cannabis is always rock solid for creating.
Always, all day.
Do we have any other questions out there? Yeah, I see one in the back. Thank you.
I was just wondering if anyone's had any experiences with 5-MeO DMT, and if you've been able to transcribe that into your art at all? If you could elaborate on that a little bit.
That's the frog one, right?
No,
Yes.
Is that the,
Toad.
It's the baphomet. Yeah, I've done that.
Sorry.
Yeah, the Sonoran desert toad.
I could say that it was a much darker place for me personally. It was like a much more like sinister vibe for me, and I remember there being a green planet and a blue planet, and the green planet was overtaking the blue planet, and it was just like a really interesting thing. I did actually paint that at one time. I don't have that piece here, but I did paint that, and that's my only experience with that. It was an accident. I'm just gonna put that out there. But it was very interesting and much more of a sinister experience. But I had to paint it because it was like it was nothing I'd ever seen before.
Beyond that piece, do you think it affected your art going forward?
I do think that there is a slightly, like especially with the black light usage, there's like you kind of have to, people look at me and they see a dark person, you know, they see like I wear all black and I'm just kind of a weirdo in general, which I don't really mind, right?
Me neither.
Okay, right. It's a very grounding color, that's what I tell people. It's grounding and metal. I feel like it definitely, I feel like there might be like a sinister side to my art as far as like there is a balance of darkness and light. But that balance is everywhere in life and every single person and every single thing. You can't really like say that something's dark just because it looks different, you know, whatever. But yeah, I've had that experience and I did transfer to art, that's all I know. But there was like, it was definitely like a more interesting experience, and it definitely it shed, even though it was a more sinister light, it shed light upon my heart that I understood myself better in that aspect, I think. I don't know. This thing freaks me out.
Anybody else have anything to add there? Maybe one more question from the audience? One of us? Oh, there we go. Beautiful. Thank you.
Hi, maybe to Ben and Ali, you guys talked about this. Ben, you said you had a piece of art that you used psychedelics and then you learned more from it, or it kind of spoke with you. Ali, you said previously you had an idea and then psychedelics have let you move away from the idea that you had moving in. How do you guys know when it's finished?
That's an applicable question to literally any creative person. I don't even know.
Well, with respect to using psychedelics.
So, luckily for me, when I'm using colored pencils as a medium, there's only like literally so much I can put on before I literally can't put any more on the paper anymore. I'd say, I don't know, you just like kind of know. I don't even know if that's like psychedelics have influenced that. I've definitely, like I've mentioned before, been in places where I was working on a piece and I just like did not know what I was supposed to do with it next. And then I like walked away and then happened to be under the influence of a compound and then looked at it again and was like, bam, like yes, like I know exactly what I'm gonna do next. And then from there, I guess it's sort of like figuring out like the point to completion from there. I don't know if it was like, I don't know, I guess that's as like deep as I can go into it.
Yeah, pass the mic down. I imagine it's definitely more of an issue with psychedelic art given the level of detail these are represented.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not like Android Jones making like it's like digital stuff that goes infinitely smaller.
So the question of when do you know that it's done is something that I struggle with constantly, because my brain is always thinking of, but what if we did this? What if we did that? Endless possibilities, and but that's also the beauty of it, because we have so many paths to choose, and just reminding yourself that none of them is the wrong option. So it kind of forces you to make a choice of like, all right, this is going in this direction, and you just have to trust your process. And what I do a lot of times is I just look over my entire piece and I'll go into like every angle of it, or I'll look at it from all different sides, and I'll be like, is there something about this viewpoint that I could make more interesting and yet keep the general idea of what I'm doing? I really like to add details into like unexpected places that you have to like look at it from a weird angle to see it. And I think that kind of speaks a lot to, you know, your experience. It's like you can have the front face-on image and see one thing, but you have to kind of take your time and look around all the little pieces to get the full picture. And so that's something I strive for, and a lot of it is really just based on either, one, when I get sick and tired of working on it, and I'm just like, I want to work on something else, or two, I just trust my intuition, and I'm like, you know what, I really feel like this piece is done, and you know, you feel like it's like its character has been formed, and you get like a lot of my pieces, I feel like they're characters with personalities, and so I'm like, I really feel like this has its personality now, and it has its full idea expressed. So.
Arash, did you want to?
Real quick, Leonardo da Vinci said, "Art is never completed; it is abandoned."
Yeah.
And Maja, you said you have a piece that you've been working on for 2 years?
Yeah, I've learned with that one that I just, I do like a couple brush strokes a day now at this point, because overworking something is the worst. I have literally spray painted and blacked out something that I'm just completely done working with, and then sure enough, if I take a nail file, all that glowy paint is just right underneath there, and I can create something. It's just like a never-ending struggle. It's the wrestle, I call it the wrestle, and it's never done, and it's only done when somebody's like, I have to have this and you have to bring it to my house right now. And it's like, okay, you can have it. Like, they're always your babies. You're always going to be revisiting and retouching. And it's a horrible OCD, honestly. It's like, you're just kind of like, what can I do? But the experience that you're experiencing, when you work on a piece for 2 years, you know, you go to many parties, you do many things, you meet many people, you hear many songs, and it all influences that moment. So I've learned, even if I only take 10 minutes a day on my art, I have a baby and a 12-year-old, like, I don't have time. Even if I only take 10 minutes a day, and I'm like, okay, this painting needs yellow today, and I add just a couple touches of yellow, you know, canary, whatever, like, it's still satisfying, and I can look at it, and I have it in my living room, and I go, oh, that's nice, I'm glad I felt that way today. And it's all just a process of constantly unfolding myself, and as I unfold myself, my pieces become complete. But they're never done. Like, it's never a thing where you're like, oh, I'm done with this and I'm going to put it down, because I'll have a piece sitting around in my living room for 6 months, and then I'll look at it and I'll be like, oh, now that I've grown as a human being, this is what I want to do to this piece now before it's out of my possession. Because once they leave, they're like your children. Once they're gone, and it's not, they're doing their own things, they're in someone else's living room, you know, you get to revisit them in photos, or maybe you get to go to that person's house and see it, but it's never going to be yours again. And while you have them, you know, you nurture them, and that's just kind of what your art is. It's a nurturing of self. And I fully encourage every human being to nurture yourself. And if it's through a creative process, whether it's video or audio or painting or sculpting, or, I mean, your art's incredible, and I love how you incorporate life into it. It's beautiful. The garden, that's awesome. And I think that whatever you can do to express yourself as a creative individual is important for any kind of growth as an individual, personally. It's never done.
Closing thoughts?
Sorry, really quickly, I mean, this brings me back to something I mentioned in the beginning. It's Alex Gray's idea of energetic nodes, and everything that everyone's been talking about is the energy that they're putting into their work. And something he talks about, well, this was taught to me by another artist, is that the more time that you spend on a piece, the more of your energy goes into it. And that's what you all are really feeling when you're looking at at everyone's artist, is the energy and the nurturing and the care of life that we have towards ourselves, and also the value of life that we have for everyone else. And I think, to your question, they're completely right. I don't think anything's ever completed until it leaves our possession. But even then, I'm like, I look at the prints that I have, I'm like, oh my God, I want to do this, I want to do this. But I think it's more about the energy and the love and the care that you're putting into it. And when you feel like it's just exploding with the energy that you want, I think that's the moment when you can be like, Okay, cool. But also as a painter too, you can make things very brown very easily if you keep adding paint to it. So that's also really important to know. It's like, okay, it's time to walk away when it's turning brown.
Yeah. Nothing's perfect.
And with that, unless we have any pressing closing thoughts, we should wrap up this discussion. Thank you again, artists, for sharing and bearing your souls and insight. I'm greatly appreciative. Please go and interact with these artists. That Maja is standing right there. Briar will be in the back corner. We have Ben and Allie and Ethos, and Arash right here with some of his pictures. Please go talk to them about their art, buy their art, and thank you guys all for coming. It's been wonderful.